All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's CDBG office hours. I'm Mike Phillips, Federal Program Specialist. Also on the webinar, we have Felicity Gosser, Federal Program Specialist, Mamie Early, our CDBG Section Chief. And from our ICF team, we have Lexi Baru, Ann Schmidt, and Lauren Polk. If you are unfamiliar with Zoom, here's how you can ask a question to our team. In your user dashboard, there should be a Q&A kind of chat icon you can click on. And you can ask questions anonymously, but we do ask that you leave your name, organization, or the region you're associated with, and this just better helps us keep questions grouped together and track any follow-up. The team will read questions out loud throughout the presentation and provide answers if possible, and all questions will be saved and recorded as part of the public record. And with that, let's get into our CDBG program updates. I'll pass it off to Minnie.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everyone. For the CDBG program updates for our 2022 CDBG NOFA, we had 42 recommended for award. 1 is pending acceptance. 2 are in pending final approval. 10 is still currently routing, and 29 has been approved. For the 2023 CDBG NOFA, the projected drop date would be September 2023, so towards the end of this month, and this will be for the OTC, the over-the-counter waitlisted project, which is approximately 19 million that's on that wait list. For the 2024 CDBG NOFA, the projected drop date will be in January 2024, and that will be also competitive and over-the-counter. Approximately 48 million will be available. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to, I don't know if Michael or Felicity, if you're gonna.
I can do these few slides.
Okay.
We are holding a fraud, waste, and abuse training coming up on next Wednesday at this time, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And this is a requirement that all grantees attend. We did have this information go out in the newsletter it's been going out for a few weeks, but it did come to our attention that it wasn't mentioned that it was mandatory until last week. So if you do, we really encourage you to attend. If you have to, if you're unable to attend and anybody else from your jurisdiction is unable to attend, we will send it to you as a miscellaneous task for you to certify that you have watched the recording after it occurs. But please do try to attend in person. As you know, it's always better to be there so you can ask any questions that you have during the presentation and hear comments, etc. So there is a link that is available. Somebody will put that in the chat if they haven't already, and it's the meeting will be held via Teams webinar. And then we also wanted to ask everybody to save the date for the 2024 NOFA listening session that we have been mentioning. We will be holding a listening session to get your feedback prior to releasing the January 2024 NOFA. We don't yet have the registration set up for this, but we anticipate holding the meeting on Wednesday, October 25th, which is an off week for office hours, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time. So please do mark your calendars. Registration information coming soon. Mike, I'll kick it back over to you.
Good, thank you, Felicity. Let's get into our Q&A recap from last week's or 2 weeks ago office hours. All right, this first question was on shovel-ready funding. And the question was, if my project's dollar size is more than the OTC limit, do I have to have the remainder of the funds already secured before I even apply for the OTC grant? And the answer to this was yes. At the time of the application, your project needs to be shovel-ready within 90 days. That means that if your project requires additional funding other than CDBG, that funding must be secured at the time of application. And this next question is on the 2024 NOFA PI application. The question was, for the January 2024 NOFA, we're going to have PI to put into the project. Will this be included in the application, or will a separate PI application be required? And the answer to this was, if you are including program income in a project applying under the 2024 NOFA, you must include that PI in your budget. We will have budget training with instructions on where in your budget that money should be included, but it does not need to be included in a separate PI application. The amount of PI you have budgeted will be incorporated into your standard agreement amount. And this is another question on the 2024 NOFA program income application. The question was, if we have a PI only application close to being submitted, do we need to try to get that completed prior to the 2023 NOFA being issued this month? As I think you said, we will have to do it in the new application at that point. If so, do you have a firm date yet on when that will be issued? And the answer to this was, we are still working out the details of the 2023 PI application. Instead of doing a new PI only application every year, we may instead implement a PI only application platform. And we are looking to have a PI only application platform that stays open all the time, available in 2024. So for right now, if you are interested in submitting a PI only application, we would like to work with you directly to see what the best course of action is given your timeline to submit. Please reach out to your CDBG representative. Today's next question is on the 2024 NOFA OTC applications. The question was, how many OTC applications can be submitted for the January 2024 NOFA? The answer to this was, we are proposing to have the same limits in place as originally proposed for the 2023 NOFA, which is one OTC application per jurisdiction and potentially a total of 2 applications per jurisdiction that would include 1 competitive application and 1 OTC application. We will bring this information to the October listening session to get your feedback. The reason for proposing a single OTC application per jurisdiction is that we only have a limited amount of dollars, approximately $48 million, for this upcoming NOFA. To ensure you are not preparing and we are not processing or reviewing numerous applications that we won't be able to fund, we are asking jurisdictions to set priorities for yourselves so that you have a higher likelihood of being funded. This should allow us to get the standard agreements out more quickly and allow more jurisdictions to receive funding who have not had a turn at getting CDBG funding in a while. This next question was also on the 2024 NOFA OTC applications. Let's see, the question was, with the first come, first served OTC process, applicants will be faced with deciding whether to carefully proofread the app before submitting or risk losing out to other faster submitting applicants. Will HED allow for corrections to OTC applications after submission? And the answer says, we do allow for corrections to be made. However, if we must return an application to you to make corrections, you will be returned to the end of the line. We are planning to make the application questions available prior to the portal being open so that you can prepare all of your answers prior to submitting. And this last question was on the project maximum amount. The question was, can the PI in a project exceed the maximum amount in the NOFA, or does the PI and grant funds need to be at the maximum project total? And the answer to this was, the maximum amount is the amount of grant funds you can apply for. PI can be over and above the maximum amount. Okay, that was it for our Q&A recap from office hours 2 weeks ago. So let's get into our live Q&A. Let's see, our first question is from Siskiyou. Question is, will HCD be publishing a draft template for a public notice for a CDBG closeout hearing? We only have one for the public hearing to apply to the NOFA. HCD has been nitpicky about the language in these notices in the past, so I'm hesitant to draft one from scratch.
Maybe I'm not aware of us having any plans to have a template for closeout hearings. It can be on whatever the jurisdictions. You can model it after any other public notice. Is that? But maybe am I missing anything?
Yes, and I believe in the closeout job aid, I think there is some documentation regarding the public hearing process that they can reference. So that will be the first step to go to that closeout job aid.
And the way to get that is to
And did you
contact
have
your
a
rep.
question? I see you unmute yourself, Ann.
I was just going to say, we're going through the equity review right now of Chapter 12 of the Grants Management Manual for closeout. And so I will verify or double check. We don't currently have an appendix or a tool as a sample, but it does talk a little bit about the requirement of having that second hearing prior to submitting for closeout.
Thank you, Ann.
So we'll make sure we well, so that documentation that isn't published yet. So my advice to Siskiyou County is for the closeout packet information, contact your rep and get the closeout packet from them, and then the other information will be published shortly.
Can you proceed? Let's see. Our next question is from Murray. Please explain the process for applying for planning grants. Can I apply now or wait until January? Can you point me to the documentation that I can use for information?
I'll start, and then I'll maybe can add to what I say. So the process, planning grants will not be an eligible activity under this September 2023 NOFA. The September 2023 NOFA is only for previously waitlisted 2019-2020 over-the-counter applications that were submitted. So the place to apply for a planning grant is under the upcoming January 2024 NOFA. That's the first answer to that question. And then in terms of documentation to use, the first place to look would be in our grants management manual and the description around what eligible activities are as it relates to planning. Mamie, do you have anything else to share?
And just to let them know that it's going to be competitive in the January 2024 NOFA. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about applying for a planning grant in January.
And Mamie, am I correct to say that if there is a particular planning activity that a grantee is interested in applying for, a good thing to do would be at this stage before the NOFA is open, reach out to your rep and describe to them what it is that you're thinking about, and then they might be able to provide you with some technical assistance.
Correct. Because once the application opens, we are unable to provide technical assistance on a competitive application. So yes, so please use this time now if you're entertaining doing a planning grant or any type of activity for January in 2024 to have those discussions with us now to kind of map out your plan and the best course of action to be able to have a successful application and to meet your needs in your community.
Thank you, Mamie. Let's see. Our next question is from Murray. As I now understand, the CDBG is meant to be used for gap funding and not upfront or sole source funding. So I'm left up the creek without a paddle. I need funding to get us started off. Can you point me to the other California government sources of funding for my project to construct a cultural visitor center for my city?
Thanks for the question, Murray. The CDBG is intended to be gap financing. At the moment, we are leveraging other funding sources. However, your previous question was about planning. So that's one of the reasons we make the planning grants available, is so that you can come in and get a planning grant so that you can use that to create the plans that sometimes you need to get other non-CDBG sources of funding. So that probably it sounds like if that's where you're starting, that's a good place to start. I don't know what jurisdiction you are with, But keep in mind that a cultural visitor center is likely only an eligible activity if the service area for that cultural visitor center, in terms of what is the residential area that is served by that center. It must be low and moderate income. So you're going to want to identify what the anticipated service area is for that cultural visitor center, and then you can work with us, you can work with the resources that we have in our grants management manual to determine if it is a low and moderate income area, because that's kind of the starting point for CDBG is for that particular type of activity. It's only eligible if you're in a low mod area. Anything to add there, Mamie or Anne?
Nothing for me. You hit it.
Thank you. Let's see, our next question is from Sistu. When will the recording be made available for the WFA training? Unfortunately, I have a region meeting in Oakland at the time. Also, how many staff members should attend?
And we don't know yet when go ahead, Anne.
I was going to say the exact same thing. So we're using a slightly different platform because ICF is hosting this through a Teams webinar. I will download and share the video as soon as possible, but we will have to work with HCD on making sure that the format is compatible, that it is able to be uploaded, and then we will remediate the slides and have those available as well. So as soon as we can, but we do not know how long that will take.
My estimate is it'll probably be a month to 6 weeks before it's up, because of all the steps that are involved in making a document ADA accessible and for getting it onto our YouTube channel. So what we'll do is we will check the attendance records, and we will send out a miscellaneous task with the link to the recording, and ask that you certify that you've watched it on your own app afterwards. So that'll be the process. And in terms of how many staff members should attend, we at least want one actual representative from the jurisdiction, not just your consultants, to attend, because this is very important to ensure that we are taking all the necessary precautions to avoid fraud, waste, and abuse. So please do plan to have at least one representative from your jurisdiction either attend live or watch the recording. Ideally, attend live.
And can I add to that as well?
Please.
Some jurisdictions, they have sub-departments that handle different parts of the CDBG awards. So if that applies to your jurisdiction, so at least one person from those sub-departments to attend.
Thank you, Mamie.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question is from Anonymous. Let's see, are additional funds for CDBG CV projects referenced in office hours back in June still available?
So we are still working on making that announcement about augmentation of CDBG funds available. Should be coming shortly. I don't have an exact status update on that, but it's finishing up with review of our legal team, and we'll be working on releasing that opportunity and describing the process for requesting those additional dollars. Quick summary is that they will be only made available to construction projects that experienced cost overruns. First priority will be tribes that had to come in originally. It will only be made available to existing CDBG CV grantees and with current contracts. The funds will be to augment current contracts to cover the original scope of work and any cost overruns that were incurred for that original scope. And you'll need to submit documentation of those cost increases in order to be approved for the increased funding. It will be first come, first served basis after that priority of tribes, then home key projects, and then regular CDBG CV capital projects. We can once we make that available, we'll be sure to announce it in office hours with a link to the materials and And we can answer more questions about that then. Coming soon. Thanks for the question.
Thanks. Let's see, our next question is from Kelly. Let's see, our Board of Supervisors is very interested in using PI funds for county roads. Could you clarify what infrastructure CDBG funds can be used for in regards to roads? Is it just for new roads and improvements like sidewalks, ADA, intersection, etc.?
Thanks for the question, Kelly. First thing to know about roads is that roads are eligible when the either road or infrastructure improvements are eligible primarily under two matrix codes. One is low and moderate income area, so that's the service area served by the roads improvements. The other could be that if it's in connection to a housing development and it's the infrastructure that's needed to do the improvements related to housing. So it kind of depends on what the service area is for the particular improvements that your county wants to do. It isn't necessarily the entire county. It just depends on the nature of the roads. If it's a highway, then that's probably going to be the whole county. If it's surface streets in a neighborhood, it may just be that neighborhood. So it really depends on how the service area is defined. It can be used for new road installations, and then it also can be used for the improvements that you mentioned. What it cannot be used for is regular road maintenance. Anne, anything to add there?
No, that was great. I think that really that last statement about regular road maintenance is important. So a lot of times we see road work when it's aligned with maybe water sewer expansion or under road utilities that are changing in size or scope, but not simply resurfacing.
Thanks for that clarification. Again, Kelly, I think that we're kind of repeating this theme, but if you have a project that you want to inquire about and ask some questions about its eligibility, a good time to do that is now before the January NOFA. And because you can kind of get your questions answered, get direction to resources that you might want to use, and start thinking about that before the NOFA's on the street. And we can provide that technical assistance when we're not in an open application period.
Thank you, Christy. So your next question is from Nuria. Hopefully I said that right. What is the last date to apply for NOFA 2023? If you are waitlisted, you said the drop date is September 2023. Does that mean the begin to apply date?
Great question, Nuria. Thank you. The NOFA is anticipated to drop September 29th. It will be open. Mamie, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these dates because I'm going by memory. It will be the NOFA documents will be available for 30 days for you to review, including the application questions. You won't be able to apply during that time. Then after 30 days, the eCivis portal will open. And from the date that the portal opens, so that'll be October 30th or thereabouts. I don't remember the exact date. I have to look at the calendar to see if that's a weekday. From that date, you'll have 60 days to apply, or 60 days or until the funds are exhausted to apply. But we do anticipate having sufficient funds for all previously waitlisted projects to come in. So it's 60 days from October 30th. So it'll be the end of December. And those dates will be finalized in the published NOFA.
Thanks. So your next question is from Murray. So I asked 2 questions earlier regarding my city construction project. Thank you. Our city is severely disadvantaged, and so I already know CDBG is the right source. Let's see, you twice mentioned the grants management manual. So can you please point me to the document, or can I easily find it on your website? Thank you. And yes, we can. I can link you to our website. If you go to our website and you scroll down just slightly, you'll see like a few tabs that are like in blue. And one of them is the grants management manual. And you just click on that tab, and everything should populate. But let me pull up our website and link it in the chat.
Thanks for the question, Marie. Sometimes we forget that not everybody knows about all the resources that we have. So this is the right place to be and the right place to ask the question. So thank you. And we do, and when we have the whole grants management manual published, we do anticipate doing a deep dive sort of walk through each of the chapters, probably during office hours, as an upcoming training opportunity. So don't know exactly when that will be calendared, but it is on our list of things to do and make sure we're supporting grantees in that way.
Thank you, Felicity. Let's see, our next question is from Nuria. If you started a project, part of a project, and spend the money, sorry, I messed up. Okay. So if you started a project, part of a project, and spend the money in which we are waitlisted for the NOFA 2023, can we still get reimbursed if we are awarded the project?
That's a good question, Nuria, and we need to have an individual conversation. It depends what how your jurisdiction allocated the funds, and it identified that the funds were that they was going to make other funds available, or if it was always contingent on receipt of future CDBG funds. It depends on how that was how that decision was made by your local governing body, whether it's supplantation or not.
And we can have a discussion one-off to kind of see exactly what transpired, to see if, to be able to answer the question better for you.
Thank you, Mimi. Let's see, our next question is from Lori. So Felicity, can you tell us how much funding is available for the CV additional funding?
And I know that's a number you were working on. It's still a bit in flux because we have some folks who are closing out and funds are being disencumbered. So let's get back to you next week with that dollar amount, because I don't want to give a false number. So we will let you know. It's not insignificant. So we anticipate being able to augment several projects, but I don't have the number immediately available.
Good, thank you, Felicity. So your next question is from Anonymous. Are ADA improvements to city-owned buildings and parks eligible for CDBG funding, regardless of the overall income of the area?
That's a great question. Generally, yes. If they are parts of the building that are accessible to the general public, and you can assume that that people who have disabilities are using those features of the park or the city-owned buildings. So my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but a bathroom that's only available to city staff, for example, you could not do ADA improvements in that interior bathroom. But if it was a public restroom in city hall or in a city building that was accessible to members of the public, then it would be eligible, just as an example.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that there's a section in Chapter 2 of the Grants Management Manual that addresses the removal of architectural barriers and how it meets a HUD-eligible activity and a matrix code, the national objective for limited clientele.
Thank you, Anne. Let's see, our last question is from Paul. If a grantee applied for infrastructure in support of new housing, how long does the grantee have for the housing project to come to fruition to meet a national objective?
So in full disclosure, Paul sent me an email about this earlier this week, and I have it drafted up with a CC to Felicity and Mamie to respond. But I think it's a challenging situation, and one that I would certainly defer to HCD in terms of what parameters they would put on grantees. I would just say traditionally, most states look to fund projects that upfront from application are designed to be an eligible activity and meet a national objective. And it is very challenging for states to fund pre or speculative work for another project to meet the national objective. But I will provide more information, Paul, in very shortly.
I will also add that our standard I don't know if you're talking about a project that's already been applied for, or if you're talking about a new project being contemplated. Our current standard, so if it's a project that was a new project. Okay. So the language in our standard agreement boilerplate is 24 months for new housing units. Where the national objective is LMH, and it's new housing units. The standard agreement language is 24 months from the closeout date of the contract. So that's our standard. I have to look back at the stand. So sorry. So Paul asked. So 24 months after the fund expiration date. Paul, I'd have to look at our new boilerplate to see if it's 24 months after the fund expiration date or 24 months after the contract expiration. One is 3 months after the other. I
believe it's the closeout, but we can double check. Yeah. I know it just changed.
All right, that looks like all of the questions that we have in the queue for now. So go ahead and give everyone another minute or two to get any last minute questions.
And I'll just say thanks to the folks who are asking questions and providing support in the chat for our YouTube channel and registration information for office hours.
Okay. Alrighty, if there are no additional questions, thank you everyone for your questions, comments, and engagement. We got the fraud, waste, and abuse training next week, same time, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. The other registration's in the chat, so register if you have not already. Yeah, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week for the fraud, waste, and abuse training. Thank you, everyone.